Rebecca has been a school leader since 2003, but actually has been a teacher for 25 years. She's worked in schools in the UK, in the Netherlands, and now she works with us in Malaysia at the International School of Park City. Rebecca is the founder and the inspiration behind Women Ed Malaysia. None of us would be sat here this evening if it hadn't been for Rebecca pulling us together. As well as a head teacher, she's a fantastic mother, she's a devoted wife, she's a loyal friend, and she's a talented doodler, if you didn't know that about her. When you were talking, Amy, I was thinking, I hope Rebecca's put me on her list of friends. And if she was going to ask me why I was friends with her, I would say, because Rebecca, you make me feel really confident. You are the most honest and trustworthy friend. And you give really great feedback and you never judge. So this evening, Rebecca has promised to share with us her flops, her failures, her mistakes, and her mishaps, and all the learning she's got from them, so we don't have to make them ourselves. I'm really delighted to welcome Rebecca.
Oh, thank you very, very much, Katie. So I'm nervous and I'm going to cry now because that was just such a lovely introduction. So thank you very much. And thank you, Amy. What an inspirational story to follow. I have to admit, I've only been in KL for just under 2 years, and Amy was one of the first people I met here in Dessa Park, and she made me feel welcome. She talked real to me, and I got to know her and her family very quickly, and it was the warm and open nature that you have that I'm sure has contributed amazingly to your business. So thanks, Amy. And so my name's Rebecca Finley, as Katie said, and I'm the head of primary at the International School, Park City here in KL. I've been a head teacher since 2009, and I actually spent most of my career in the UK until 2015 when I moved to the Netherlands, and then 2 years ago here to KL. But I'm not here actually to tell you my story tonight, because I think my journey, like many of yours, has had highs and lows, successes and failures. So instead, I chose this quote from the amazing Brene Brown to summarize what I'd like to achieve tonight. Because I'm hoping by sharing some of my mistakes and how I've learned from them, I hope that you'll be able to create your own survival guide. Now, throughout the slides that I'm sharing, I've got 2 icons here that you can look out for. The first one is the Women Ed icon here. And I've put that against some of the things I'm going to share with you that I think that as a female, I was more predisposed to behaving in that way. And I'll explain a bit more about that as we go through. But I've also included some top tips. And these tips are, even if you can't, maybe if my story or my experiences don't relate to you or don't resonate with you, I'm hoping that you'll be able to take these top tips away with you and apply them to whatever line of business or industry that you work in, and that you'll have something to start your survival guide with. So first of all, I want to share with you my secret weapon. Okay, I carry it with me everywhere I go. In fact, I think we all do. Emotional intelligence is a set of abilities that can be used to impact how we interact with people. And for me as a teacher, my job is people, whether it's little itty bitty 3-year-olds or working with adults. I work with people day in, day out. And for me, this is the best toolkit I can have. And you know, women actually are proven to have a greater ability in some areas of emotional intelligence, particularly self-awareness and empathy, which actually can sometimes be to our detriment. But more about that later. But practiced regularly and used well, emotional intelligence can help us as leaders navigate rocky roads and pave a smooth path to success. But my word of warning here is, before I embark on telling you all the things that I've done wrong, the most important lesson here is that I truly believe you will only learn from your mistakes if you can accept that you've made them in the first place, and not apportion blame to others. So everything I'm about to share with you tonight, it's my fault. I did it. No one made me do it. But after it's happened, I've sat down, I've taken time to reflect on it, and I've learned from it. Does it mean I stop making these mistakes? No. Does it mean that I won't be making any more mistakes? Absolutely not. But to be able to accept that I've made them is a really big step in being able to learn from them. So I'm a woman and I'm British. Put those two things together and you get someone who tends to say sorry a lot. Okay, I've always used sorry and other apologetic synonyms in my everyday language. And to be honest, I've never really noticed it. But it wasn't until I became a leader that I realized that actually saying sorry before or after asking someone to do something actually diminished anything that I said in between. Let me give you an example. So here's an email or a message that I might have written with my diminished language. Really sorry to ask you, as I know you're really busy, but if it's okay with you, can you please move the chairs you have stacked, which are blocking the fire escape? I think it might be an issue if there was a fire. Now, if we look at this language, there's so many diminished words here that really take away from the message I'm trying to give. So I'm really sorry to ask. So I've started with an apology. I know you're really busy. So again, I'm apologizing, saying that, you know, I'm adding to this other person's workload. But if it's okay with you, so I'm giving them a choice as to whether or not it's going to happen. Can you please move the chairs that are blocking the fire escape? The important information. I think it might be an issue if there was a fire. So I've in there lost the real reason completely. And I learned that if I felt I needed to apologize after making a change or asking for an action, then I really had to consider whether or not I should be asking them to do this at all. Now, if the answer is yes, I should be asking them to do this because it's necessary or the right thing to do, then my request doesn't warrant my apology. So if you look here, an altered version of that email would be blocking the fire escape with chairs is posing a risk to everyone in the building. Please arrange for them to be moved to a safer location. Thank you. Now, I don't like to boss people around too much. I like to be polite, but I also need to be clear. And I need to share an important action that's for everybody's safety, and I need it done. So using please and thank you is still polite. But I find this really hard because my go-to, as I say, as a person, is to apologize or to diminish. And so I want to share this top tip with you. In Google Chrome, you can download for free an extension for your Gmail called the Just Not Sorry plugin, right? And it goes into your toolbar. And basically, when you're typing an email, if you use any type of diminished vocabulary, it puts a little wiggly red line underneath it, and it allows you to rethink what you're writing and consider whether or not you need to make that apology. I still use it. It's absolutely brilliant. And the fact that they've made this was really validating for me because it meant that I'm not the only one that does it. So another mistake that I've made through my career. I've mentioned earlier that having a strong sense of empathy can be detrimental. And empaths, as many women are, encourage women to talk to them and encourage people to talk to them and have an open, easy to talk to nature. And I noticed early on in my headship that people chose to talk to me. And I felt really honored. I was privileged until I realized that one of the reasons that people like to talk to me was because I alleviated their problems or found their solutions for them. And, you know, I was so keen to help and share my expertise or make it worth their time having spoken to me that often people would leave my company feeling lighter because their problem had become my problem. Now, that's okay every now and again, But if 3 people come to visit me with their issues 3 times a week, that's then 9 problems that I have to carry around on my back on top of my own burden, which, let's be honest, we all have. So my top tips for you here are: avoid using the words "leave it with me" or "I'll sort it." They are a perfect recipe for taking someone's problem off of them. And give back control to the other person. By all means, help them find their own solutions, but encourage them to do so. And this at the bottom here, this is one of my favorite pieces of advice I have ever been given. And I'm so sad I can't remember who told me it, but I've never forgotten it. Let someone tell you something you already know. Because if people believe they've discovered something important or found a solution that you also had considered, let them tell you and act surprised. Congratulate them. Say, well done, that's brilliant. That's a perfect solution for this problem. Let's go do it. Because I guarantee by doing that, the person will leave your company feeling much better about themselves. And as empaths, that's what we want to achieve. Now, I'm proud to have an open door policy. If you're not sure of this term, what I mean by this is my team don't need to make appointments necessarily to come and talk to me. And my team, I hope, know that they can come and talk to me when they need to. And I always swore I was going to have an open door policy after working for a boss who had traffic lights, and I mean working traffic lights, on her office door. And you had to wait for them to change before you could enter. And if you think the KL traffic lights are bad, I'm telling you, this was never off of red. And the green, if you miss it, you were through. So I was determined I was never going to have traffic lights on my door. I was going to have an open door policy. But an open door policy needs to be managed very carefully by its owner. As over time, I've learned that I needed to set boundaries, or I risked being continuously distracted from tasks that I also needed to complete. Because if you've got a constant stream of people coming in and you get distracted and taken this way or that way, then in turn, that's going to affect my general time management, which means that I then may miss deadlines. And then that in turn well, that's going to negatively impact my reputation as a leader. That's the last thing I want to achieve. And of course, on top of that, an open door policy isn't static, it moves around with you. And I learned this the hard way. I was 34 when I became a head teacher for the first time, and the majority of staff were either older than me or they'd been at the school for a long time. And I was really keen to make my mark. I was a proper keenie. And with that came the expectation that I should have all the answers. And on more than one occasion, I literally remember being physically cornered in the hallway or the corridor or in a classroom, literally unable to move by my members of staff who wanted me to answer a question or make a decision about something then and there. And being new and impressionable, I often made those decisions quickly without much thought because I thought it would make me look incompetent if I didn't know the answer. Now, sometimes this worked in my favor, but other times the decision backfired, which I could have seen happening, of course, when things went wrong, people would turn around and say, well, Rebecca, that was your decision, which in turn made me look incompetent, which was exactly the very thing I was trying to avoid. So what I would say is avoid making non-urgent decisions on the spot. Ask people to give you more time or make an appointment with you or even direct them to discuss it with someone else. And another really important lesson I learned, and again, something I think as a female I do, is not to foster dependency. We women can sometimes do this without intending to, and we need to be really present in our actions to avoid that. And I want to use some simple psychology to explain this, okay? We're adults and we turn up to work every day, hopefully in our adult zone. As I say, yes, I work with children, but I work with adults, and I should be turning up to work with the mindset of being an adult and interacting with adults in an adult way. However, when we encourage people to become dependent on us, we become the parent. So we shift into the parent zone, and perhaps we are supportive or calming, but also maybe controlling and maybe being a bit patronizing. We move into this parental role. And you can pretty much count on the fact that if you move into this parent role, the person that you're working with, you're going to push them into the child role. Okay. So when people become dependent on us, or we encourage dependency, we take on the parent role, they become the child. Now, as a parent, we might clear all the obstacles out of the way to allow the child to succeed. And you'll get one of two results from your child from your child or your team member who's now become our hypothetical child. And this has happened to me many occasions. They either don't learn the ability to think for themselves, or even worse, they can't handle it when a decision doesn't go their way. Now, if you want to put this into a situation that you probably can understand, if you don't live with your parents or you have older siblings and you go to their house, you might turn up at their house in the adult zone. But I pretty much can guarantee, if you're anything like the relationship I have with my family, as 5 minutes after I've got into the house, my mum said something to me that I had considered controlling, critical, patronizing, or finger pointing. And before you know it, I've thrown myself down into the child zone, and I'm having a tantrum, or I'm being rebellious, or I'm shouting. And before I know it, I'm down here as a child. Now, that's all very well in a family atmosphere, but there has to be a balance as leaders. As leaders, we want to create leaders who follow us. And so we need to model effective behaviours to all our colleagues to allow them to think for themselves. So really try hard to be present and stay in the adult zone. Now, I imagine we all have heroes. One of my heroes is Jacinda Arden, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Now, I don't want to be Jacinda, and quite frankly, I don't want to be a politician either. I apologise far too much to be successful at that. But I really admire her leadership style and her compassion and strength. And the way that she leads makes me feel validated in the way I choose to lead. I'm also very lucky that I've had some amazing mentors throughout my career, so men and women who I've been able to observe or talk to or share ideas with. And when I've lacked confidence in what I'm doing or who I am, or perhaps suffer from that imposter syndrome, it really is sometimes comfortable to try and behave as your mentors would. But from my experience, I have to tell you, as soon as you try to be someone other than yourself, people will see right through you. You'll lose their trust and ultimately fail at whatever you're trying to achieve. You need to be being open and honest with your team about your strengths, but also about your weaknesses, and owning mistakes when you make them will garner their trust and cooperation. And the first thing I do with teams now, and even students and their families, is I tell them who I am. Not everything, of course, they don't need to know everything about me, but enough to foster trust and a connection. So this is a good one. When I arrived at my previous school, I had 7 years of headship under my belt. And within a few weeks, I was becoming really disheartened at the fact that I had not been asked to take the lead on projects across the school that I had had a lot of experience and expertise in. And it wasn't until a little shake of confidence and self-reflection that I realised there's 500 staff at this school. Why was I so self-absorbed to think that the whole staff body had memorised my CV or knew what I'd done in my career? And I realised if I wanted them to know, I had to tell them. Now, no one likes a show off, and as women, we don't always like to crow about our successes, do we? But there's many ways around this. In this instance, I recognised an area needed addressing. I wrote to the CEO, sharing my experience and offering an unsolicited proposal for what I wanted to do. And soon after, I was leading on a project and the necessary was achieved. So the message I want to share here is don't wait to ask to be asked to lead, folks. Speak up, and remember, even if it's not in your job description, forget the hierarchy, offer your ideas, your solutions, and go for it. Now, this slide represents a more personal failure for me, and it kind of resonates with some of the things Amy was saying in her talk earlier. When I first became a head, my youngest daughter was 7 months old. I had a very clear picture of both the perfect head teacher I was going to be, as well as the perfect mother. My child was going to have the best packed lunches, the most creative handmade costumes for book day, and her hair was going to be in the most elaborate braids every day. Needless to say, I won't surprise you, you mustn't tell anyone, that to this day, my dear daughter will not eat a thing that I pack for her lunch. She once attended a Disney Frozen party dressed as a Spanish flamenco dancer, because it was the only costume we had in the house. And she's learned to braid her hair herself in a desperate attempt to look presentable. So this slide might not be palatable to you all here, but I have to say, I don't believe you can be everything to everyone. You do have to make a choice sometimes, because I don't think you can give 100% at work and 100% at home at the same time. And that's when you have to accept help. I used to have a wonderful TA who would regularly offer to take my daughters home when they were little and give them dinner after school. I was so embarrassed and ashamed that someone was trying to feed my children that I would decline. And then, of course, the next time I looked at the clock, it'd be 6 o'clock. We'd go home tired. There's no food because I hadn't been in the shops. Then I'd have to cook, and it was bad. The kids would become grumpy. I would get grumpy. You know the pattern, don't you? Please tell me I'm not the only one. If I'd just accepted the help, the children would have come home happy and fed, and we could have enjoyed some mum and daughter time. And what I learned here is that no one really offers to help you if they don't genuinely want to help you. And if that's not the case, you only have to say yes once, they won't do it again. But the other important thing is that no one's judging you, no one's got time. Everyone's far too busy with their own lives. So accepting help, ladies, does not mean you're a failure. It shows strength. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn, but it's really, really important. Try and remember that one. So my final piece of advice is be a swan. 6 years ago, my first day as a head in the Netherlands, acting head in the Netherlands, I walked into my office, took off my coat and answered a knock on my office door. And it was the office manager who was there to tell me we'd just received a bomb threat and there was a bomb hidden in the building. At that point, I became a swan. And what I mean by that is my heart was beating like a drum. My hands were shaking. My knees were like jelly, just like a swan's little feet, aren't they? Paddling very quickly to keep them afloat. But somehow, to everyone around me, I was calm. I was a swan, gliding along the water, knowing that there was a bomb in our school. Now, if I'd come out of my office screaming, "There's a bomb," and waving my hands around like I actually wanted to do, there'd have been complete panic and utter chaos. But by remaining calm, as a team, we were able to call the police, the bomb squad, evacuate the building, get the children to a neighbouring school, and have a full sweep of the building and have it clear and reopened by 11 a.m. that morning. And by 2 p.m, I was presenting to governors on a topic completely unrelated to bombs. Now, my reason for telling you this and for finishing on this note is not due to the way in which it was handled or I reacted, because my mistake was I thought it was something that would never happen to me. Okay, as leaders, we have to be ready to respond to a crisis and lead our teams through it calmly with their trust and confidence. Now, we can't prepare for what we don't know is coming, right? This 12 months has taught us all that, as Amy shared with her business. But it's how we respond, how we act, and how we cooperate with each other that's important. And this is the time that you draw on that secret weapon that I started with, emotional intelligence. And remember that no one expects us to have all the answers, but you need to be open. You need to be ready to reflect, own your mistakes, listen to others, and be true to yourself. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My final top tips are 3 amazing books that I really love. One of them by Simon Sinek that Amy was talking about as well. Invisible Women, an incredible book about the data gathered in a world designed for men. And of course, the inimitable Daniel Goleman, Working with Emotional Intelligence, an incredible read. Feel free to connect with me on Twitter. I tweet occasionally at @FindLR, and you can contact us and our network at womenednys@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I hope it has been of some help for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bex, and congratulations, because I know you were nervous and this is definitely 10% braver, so well done you. Lots of things have really resonated with people. There's lots of things coming through on text messages and in the chat about being very practical advice, lots of things being very relatable and resonating with people. And it's interesting you talk about the Swan thing, because I think you're one of the most together and in control people that I know. So it's nice to know that you're flapping like the rest of us underneath all of that. Everybody loves the Chrome extension, sorry not sorry. Love, everybody's downloading that now. The site's going to crash this evening, I tell you. And I loved your visual with the monkeys. We don't need to take anybody's monkey, it's theirs. They can have it, they can keep it. I just smiled when you were talking about the parent-child transactional analysis. I mean, within an hour, I can turn into an 11-year-old when I'm within a meter of my mother. And I think, I did a quick flick through all of the cameras and things, and everyone was smiling and agreeing, I think, with that. Yeah, I mean, I got the heroes, mentors, friends, and being authentic was just a really great message for us. A friend once said to me really recently, just keep doing you. And that's the thing, isn't it? Being authentic and just trying to be anything other is quite exhausting, isn't it? And such good advice for us. We've got a few comments in the chat, all just very positive about all the messages tonight. I thought it was really great how you had a common theme about not being everything to everybody, which we often feel the pressure of as women, I think. So that was interesting that you had that joint message tonight for us. People saying they've perhaps been in a slump recently, but now feel more positive because of the talks tonight. So somebody's asked, Rebecca, was there ever a time where you considered stepping back from leadership in your career, and how did you handle that, and how did you weigh things up?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm an art teacher, and I have to tell you that I'm really torn. And there's a couple of people from my school here today who will know that when they can't find me in school, I'm in the art room covered in paint with as many children as I can get my hands on. I love my job. Okay, I've only ever been a teacher. Apart from working when I was a student, I'm one of those people that's just gone from school to uni to teaching. I've only ever been a teacher, and leadership was not planned. I do not have a plan. I did not have a plan. I still don't have a plan. It's always just happened, and it's something that I think is really natural and organic, and I try and go by how I feel. And if I feel that I've reached a point where I can't take a school any further, or if I've reached a point where I know that there's someone better and younger maybe, and with more ideas, who's ready to come in and take it to the next step, I'd like to think I'd know when to step aside as well. And so with these two things in mind, I do have a dream of being back in that art room, and sometimes leaving, particularly during COVID times, all this leadership things to one side for somebody else. But I do love it at the same time, and I love to be able to share some of the things I've learned, and know that other people, I'm just looking in the chat, other people have had that happen to them too. That's just amazing. It makes me feel a little bit better. So yeah, not yet, maybe someday though.
That's interesting though, Bex, because most people see careers and leadership paths as trajectory in one direction, and actually they don't have to be like that. And if they're not, it's not necessarily a failure or a flop, it's just a decision and something that's right at the time. So thank you for that message. Thanks to both our speakers this evening. I have really enjoyed hosting and really enjoyed all of your company. So relatable, so practical, really inspiring. Anybody who's had a tough day today is going to leave ready to take the public holiday by storm tomorrow, I'm absolutely sure. So thanks to our Women Ed team also for supporting and being here and making everything run smoothly.